What did James Jeffrey had to say?
Well, James Jeffrey said that even though the United States was not around the table last weekend in Istanbul when the president there, Erdogan, hosted Vladimir Putin, Angela Merkel and Emmanuel Macron, he said that Istanbul summit took huge steps towards ending the civil war in Syria. That said, he said the situation remained critical, complicated and dangerous, and he said one of the reasons for that was because of the amount of foreign forces in the region. He was then unapologetically critical of Russia for enticing so many foreign forces to the region. Let's take a little listen to what exactly he had to say.
I think that Russia's seemingly unyielding and complete support for the Assad regime and the Assad regime's rejection of a political process and constant attempts for a military solution against the will of the United Nations and the Security Council has been helpful. And we think that what that has done is that has drawn in all of these outside military forces. Now we're staying on. Now you have Turkish troops in large numbers in the whole northwest of the country. You have Israeli Air Force units flying all around the country hunting Iranians who are moving in long-range systems to put Israel at risk. This is what Russia has allowed to happen.
Here in Brussels, the talk is all about reconstruction of Syria and the price tag, of course, that will come with. The UN agency put it at 388 billion euros. That's the price that the war has cost so far. I would imagine the United States won't be digging in its pockets to pay for that.
First of all, under no circumstances now, and we're doing everything in our power with considerable success to ensure that the Europeans, the European Union, or international organizations such as the UN and the World Bank don't either. The idea of rebuilding a country that has been destroyed primarily by Assad with some help from the Iranians and the Russians at our cost, and to allow Assad to do something like this again is absolutely ludicrous, and we're not going to do it, and we're being, as I said, very successful. The reason that this is so much the talk is that the Russians are extremely active, running around and saying, the war is over, now is the time to rebuild the country. But almost half the country is not in the Assad regime's hands. Half the population has fled his area to either be in our or the Turkish areas or across the borders in Turkey, Jordan, or Lebanon. So he's far from having won the conflict. And as I said, what he has done is draw in 5 armies that are at, to some degree, at odds with each other, with considerable risk of escalation. So, no, this isn't a one conflict. It's a dangerous conflict. And we're very much engaged to see that we get our 3 outcomes. And one tool to ensure that we get them is no reconstruction flows until we see cooperation from the regime, which we haven't seen so far.
So now you can see why James Jeffrey made it his priority to visit Brussels and move in diplomatic circles here and drive that message forward that they want the Europeans to be a little bit wary with Russia. But from the outset, since the European Union published its EU strategy on Syria and had it backed by all the EU member states, they were also clear that they would not be funding any reconstruction until there was a political, genuine transition in Syria. That said, Federica Mogherini, the EU's top diplomatic chief, has been clear that the focus of the Europeans should be on the post-conflict Syria, because there's been many mistakes in the past, like Libya, after the fall of Gaddafi, that was left to its own devices. And so far, the EU has been focusing hugely on the humanitarian situation and has pledged, along with its member states, over 10 billion euros.